One important thing is to define a success criteria or measure for success, which is like turns out to be really hard in AI, because in the end, everyone wants to have these like 20% task completion improvement or like 40% higher quality. But how do you measure that? And you have to find scenarios that you can put people into different groups and just experiment. Okay, how is this group performing versus how is that group performing? Because it's very hard to figure it out otherwise, just looking backward and saying, okay, what was the increase now in like increased leads or overall lead quality? Because maybe something else happened which was not due to AI. Maybe just keeping the same level with AI was actually a win because there were some other external factors that came in. But of course, once you have one of these candidates, one of these use cases that actually work, you need to be able to iterate and improve. That's like the final step to execute.
Welcome to Rarefied Air, Stories of Inspired Service. Our host, John Palladino, Head of Client Services at InterSystems, will use his 40 years of experience to show you how to build a successful customer service program and highlight stories of innovation with customers. Join us as we explore the past, present, and future of service, from AI's promise to the enduring power of the human touch.
With me today is Tobias Zwingmann. He's the Managing Director of RAPYD.AI. I think you're going to be interested in the AI. And also with me today is Asaf Sinay from InterSystems. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So Tobias and Asaf, I'm so glad you're here, but can you take a minute and just share your backgrounds? And Tobias, start with you.
Yeah, sure. So my background, if I go really far back, originally I studied business administration. That's what I did back in 2006. But at my heart, I've always been kind of a techie. Like back in school, I created my first website, sold them and so on. But then after school, I figured out, okay, maybe I should do some business stuff. So I did that. But quickly after that, I transitioned back into IT. I did not know what that was. Turned out I did a master degree in IT management. And my thesis at the end was about exploratory data analysis. And this somehow got me into this whole data science train because I learned how to do R. Then I was hired for a role that needed to have R programming and data analysis skills. And this is how I ended up coming into this data analysis, data science track. I worked in a data science role for a couple of years, also digital product development, until I then finally transitioned into founding my own company, which is now RAPYD.AI, and helping companies achieve.
It's a great journey. A lot of overlap between business and understanding data and the technology to get that data.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, it's been really helpful for me.
Well, you've done well. So Asaf, I know you've been working with us for 21 years. You're in an engineering support group, which we're going to hear more about a little bit later. But tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I love data, and I've been focusing on analytics technologies in recent years. So progression to AI is quite natural for me in terms of interest, in terms of helping customers utilize the gold mine of data they have. So I've been enjoying kind of learning more and more about those technologies, do some hands-on experiments with it, and break it a little bit, fix it. So when customers start using it, we're in a better spot to help them.
Is it fair to say you're passionate about helping people and you're curious by nature?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Asaf. All right, let's dive right into AI. Everybody wants to know. And Tobias, you have unbelievable guidance for companies on how they should approach and execute anything related to AI, especially generative AI, which is all the buzz right now. And everybody is listening in and trying to learn from each other. So let's get right into it. So if a company is considering using generative AI, how would you contrast a good approach and a bad approach?
All right. Okay. I think there are multiple dimensions to that, but probably the worst thing you can do at the beginning is to treat AI purely as an IT topic. And that's what a lot of companies are still doing. They think that AI, it's technical, it's complicated, so we just hand that off to IT and then let IT figure that out. But what happens is in the end, you will just give birth to another IT project. And I think in the end, AI really touches more aspects of the business. And I firmly believe that the whole company and especially leadership needs to understand what AI as a technology itself is really capable of, because it's a horizontal technology. So I would always approach it more from a business perspective and see where you can integrate that. And I have a process to walk companies through that. It's extremely important where you start this project. If you started as an IT project, it will be really hard to get it out there. But if you started from a more business perspective, I think you have much better chances of bringing that to success.
And when you say horizontal, you mean like images versus text versus unstructured data? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's one aspect of it, but also in terms of use cases. So take generative AI, for example, and especially large language models where you essentially do next word prediction. And that's a very horizontal and large capability. And text and language is everywhere in businesses. So you have to be both aware of what can this technology do, what is this actually capable of doing. So to give you a simple example, ChatGPT or any large language model can generate any piece of content, but it can't really do any math or, run any calculations for you. A lot of people don't understand that. And if you approach it from the wrong use case, it'll be really hard to fix these errors later on. And because this touches every different business unit and every different business department, you have to get that right from the start and educate people also what this technology can do and what it can't do. And I think this is where my approach differentiates a little bit from what other people are doing, because I say start with understanding the technology. I'm not saying every person in the company needs to become an AI expert, but you should be on a level where, similar to, you don't need to be an electrician to know that you must not put your finger into a socket when you deal with electricity. Similar with AI, you need to learn some basic fundamentals of what can the technology do, what can't it do, and also what's behind this term. It's not only generative AI, there's more to it.
So it's like a chainsaw, for example.
Exactly.
Before you use it, you should understand how to use it properly.
Yeah. I also disagree when people think that AI is just another tool. I really treat it more as a technology. Like ChatGPT is a tool, the software, but AI and the whole paradigms behind that's more of a technology and requires also a different way of thinking to approach problem solving in different business aspects.
So understanding AI is the first step. How would you approach it after that? Would you hire consultants and bring in consultants? Would you send people off to school to study it more deeply? Would you experiment, kind of dive in and see what happens? What works and what doesn't?
I'm always a fan of bringing consultants in, because I'm doing consultancy myself. But honestly, I think this would be too early to bring consultants in at this stage. So learning AI, just to wrap that up, it's not like sending people for half a year or so to some kind of academy. If you just get hands-on or experiment or learn maybe 1 hour per week or so, I think you're really well ahead of a lot of competitors of yours. And then once you really want to start off with something, I always recommend look at the stuff that you're currently doing. So lots of people approach AI from a innovation perspective, which is fine, but it turns out to innovate new things and innovate new customer experiences is much harder instead of trying to improve what you're doing right now in your business. So I always recommend start by looking at different business processes, also inside different business units, for example, sales or marketing, and identify what I call pain points and bottlenecks. Pain points are things that are currently painful for you. For example, if you have low quality leads in your sales pipeline, that's a problem right now. But you have also bottlenecks, things that are limiting future growth. So that could be, in the sales example, to say, we have a positioning problem in our company, we are too exchangeable with everyone else there in the market. Or other examples that are more targeted to future capabilities that you need to build as a company. But once you have pinpointed those, I think only then you're in a good position to figure out in the next step, where can I actually map AI capabilities, the things that I learned in the first stage, to these different pain points and bottlenecks, and identify use cases.
So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So when we're facing priorities and problems, I look for the most impactful problem we can solve with the least amount of effort. Is that what you would do at this point? Or does that come later?
Yeah, I think it sounds great in theory, but the problem is that those really high impact problems are very rarely solved with very easy means. Even with AI, it turns out to be really difficult. So the way I like to approach it is to say, look for departments or parts of your business where you currently have the biggest sum of smaller problems. And once you have that, you can identify different smaller problems that kind of accumulate or that have a shared root cause, and try to work on these smaller problems, because you will learn a lot about not only how AI works, but also be able to transfer learnings from one project that maybe did not work out as expected to another project in your use case pipeline from the same business vertical. And I think this is where a lot of companies get this wrong and treat AI as a horizontal technology and also as a horizontal business effort, and have all these AI prototypes and projects across the whole company going on, but they can't really learn from their failures. They can't really learn as an organization and make progress in growing a higher amount of AI literacy. So I would rather say, okay, look at not big problems, but business areas or business units that have accumulated big problems or have a high impact to your business, and then break it up into lots of smaller problems, because it turns out these are much easier to be solvable with AI.
Yeah, interesting. If you don't follow this approach, you can end up wasting a lot of time. and
Absolutely.
energy and have nothing to really show for it. So if I could summarize so far, it's learn a little bit about AI, enough to understand it, pick some priorities that impact the business, and third, map AI versus those problems to get them aligned.
Absolutely.
Then what's the next step?
So the next step is then to break it down into actual use cases that you can work on. And use cases, like you don't have to overcomplicate things, but you have to think about them a little bit. The way I like to think about them is in 4 dimensions. So what's the problem we're solving? What value is created once we solve that problem? What's the solution we are intending for that? And what kind of data do we need, or do we need any data for that? Because it turns out for generative AI, there are also lots of use cases where you don't need that much data. And that was really different before in like non-generative AI times when you had to train your own models and so on. Now you can also do a lot of things when you don't have much data available. And once you have these 4 dimensions sorted out, I also like to consider a 5th dimension, which I call the prototypability of a use case. So I like to follow the 2020 rule for that.
What's the 2020 rule?
Yeah, the 2020 rule is that I say, if you try to build a use case, like slice it up into increments that you can deliver in either 20 days of work or 20K of budget. And like this is talking about like US dimensions and European, like in other parts of the world, that might be a different number. But this gives you a sense of the scope of the initial increment you should ship. Because if the initial increment or the first version of the prototype is much larger than that, then 2 things could have happened. Either the prototype is just like, it's the project in scope too big, or you're looking for highly automated and highly integrated use cases that need a lot of development effort left and right, that have nothing to do with AI in order to get them off the ground. And this is where I would like to like shift them over to a more augmented scenario that is not so highly automated.
John, I actually have a story about you.
About me.
And that use case and why it's very important to...
I have 2020 vision.
So we serve our customers for every problem that is solved and closed. And I wanted to create a dashboard for you to be able to filter that. We applied some natural language processing and, beautify the dashboard and everything. Worked on that less than 20 days, but something around that number. And I was very excited to show it to you. And I showed you how to filter, how to see the visualization and everything. And then you look at me and you say, I read them all. I don't need to filter. I read all the surveys.
I'm kind of weird like that. I like to plow through all the raw data, but that's not what most people want to do.
I learned to check with the end user about the use case and kind of start small and collaborate to make sure you're delivering the right solution.
So let's roll back for a second, Asaf. How did you learn about AI? Did you take the approach that Tobias is recommending?
Actually, I was inspired by Tobias, and I went through a class about AI and kind of analytics and BI, about a book you wrote, and O'Reilly had a kind of an online class. So I read the newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. What I loved about it is how practical it was to help you better understand, to help you do some hands-on experiments. I started doing just that. Obviously, ChatGPT made it easy for all of us to get our hands and try it out, and slowly looking for use cases at InterSystems and in technical support to learn more about it. So
yeah, for our listeners, Asaf is a well-respected leader in the support organization, and he did this in his free time.
That's right.
So you followed Tobias's advice perfectly.
Awesome.
And then you look for use cases.
That's
and then the third step was to apply AI, just to map it, to see what fit. Did I get that right, Tobias?
Yeah. And also like plan for failure, I would say, because make no mistake, AI projects are super hard. At their core, they are software projects plus data projects on top. And each of those two is already like difficult to nail. So AI can be really tough to figure that out. So I always recommend have a plan, but be ready if the plan does not work out as expected. So there's this saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So that's what happens with AI.
Famous Mike Tyson saying.
Yeah, famous Mike Tyson quote. So it's not about being like ready for that by yourself, but also like informing your stakeholders about that. Because the worst thing you can do is like kind of like overpromise what you're going to do with AI and then like underdeliver. And it's especially in generative AI, it's very easy to fall for that fallacy. I call it the 80% fallacy, because with generative AI and ChatGPT and co, a lot of use cases, you can get to like 80% good enough stuff within, let's say, 20 days, for example. But getting to 90 or 95% sometimes takes just forever, or it's not even possible to get there. And figuring that out, especially at the beginning, it's very hard. And there's also no learning blueprint you can follow. It's just like experimentation, and you need to get into that experimentation mode. And so I rather prefer to kind of like keep expectations low at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like selling also a larger vision, because like we just don't want to have all these like little AI use cases everywhere. We need to have a roadmap that accumulates, and we like have all these small wins that have together a much bigger effect than individually, but also be realistic about what you can achieve in like 1 month and how the roadmap looks like. Yeah.
Asaf, what were some other examples of what you've attempted to do with AI, and were they successful or?
At InterSystems support, we're the experts.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're the experts, and we've been doing it for many, many years, supplying the tools to our developer support engineers to help customers be successful. So I would like AI to basically give them superpowers, but not replace them. So the whole concept of augmentation and augmented AI, because somebody needs to verify that the answer is right, not just help the customer get to the middle of the road. We want them to get to the other side safely. So we have the responsibility to keep up to date with the technology, understand the customer need, and use tools. AI is just another one of them, and help them get safely to the other side of the road.
That's great. So you mentioned augmented. Tobias, do you have a comment about augmentation versus automation?
Yeah, because like I hear it so often when people think about AI, like they think about automation. I hear it so often that AI and automation is just like mentioned in one breath. And just to give you a little story how these two concepts differentiate, like I had like two companies that were trying to solve a very similar use case. And the use case was data quality and CRM. Both had Salesforce as a platform. And then the first company tried to improve their data quality by buying a software, buying a plugin for Salesforce, and then trying to like fill in the missing fields of customer records or contacts and accounts in Salesforce with some external data connection and quote unquote AI. And that was like a 6-figure budget project and took them almost a year to pull off. And in the end, it didn't meet the expectations. Like it worked somehow, but it wasn't really a huge success. So then the other company that approached that problem very similarly had a different approach. What they did, they said, okay, like we know the data in the CRM is more or less like not ideal, but let's work on the process of new data coming in. So what they did is they also bought a piece of software, but this piece of software did something else. Every time a sales rep ended a conversation on the phone, he would automatically get not only a summary of that conversation, but also pre-filled values for the CRM system. So for example, it could automatically pre-fill and say, okay, what's the next action item here? What should I put in the call notes? The salesperson could review that and just accept that, and it would automatically be sent to Salesforce. And we did a test between two groups, and it turned out that those sales reps who used that tool had a 40% higher completion rate of data in the CRM. And this was something they could immediately apply, and it was way cheaper than 6 figures.
It's in the
and this was the
workflow.
Yeah, and this was the augmented workflow, because the sales rep did the same thing as previously, but now there was kind of like this smart suggestion of saying, hey, do you want to fill that into the CRM? And they could either correct it or just say accept, and then it was in the CRM. I think this is like a good example of approaching the same problem from two different angles, like augmentation versus automation. Because lots of companies just think, okay, let's buy some software and we automate everything, and then it turns out to be great, but often it's not.
So this is great advice so far. So let's go back. You're doing the proof of concept. Some work out, some don't work out. Would you like to talk about that in terms of success versus, as you said, sometimes the scope is too big and you have to go back and rethink it?
One important thing is to define success criteria or measure for success, which is that turns out to be really hard in AI, because not only in AI, any business improvement, because in the end, everyone wants to have these like 20% task completion improvement or like 40% higher quality, but how do you measure that? And I think you have to find scenarios where, similar to one that I just explained, you can put people into different groups and just experiment, okay, how is this group performing versus how is that group performing? Because it's very hard to figure it out otherwise, just looking backward and saying, okay, what was the increase now in like increased leads or overall lead quality? Because maybe something else happened which was not due to AI. And so maybe just keeping the same level with AI was actually a win because there were some other external factors that came in. So I think this is important, like just thinking how to bring these projects on track. But of course, once you have one of these candidates, one of these use cases that actually work, you need to be able to iterate and improve. That's like the final step to execute. You need to be able to execute on that roadmap to figure out, okay, what's working, what's not working, to improve that, and then ship for the next iteration. And in the end, that's agile development and agile release cycles. And sounds like such an old topic, but it is, in my experience, like lots of companies still struggling with that to get in this agile working mode.
So you don't just end up at a finish line, you have to keep going.
Exactly. You have to keep going, and also prepare your organization for that.
The deployment is just the beginning of the journey.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say it, Asaf. Thank you.
Absolutely. And you need to have people that are ready for that, because sometimes these projects just get handed over to whoever, IT or whoever, to have that. But especially in these early phases, you need to have someone in the team who has more of a product mindset and trying to improve that and trying to improve the product, because there are still lots of things that you need to try to figure out left and right.
Top of mind for everybody when we talk about AI is it could be very useful, but it could be also very dangerous. So AI ethics is an important aspect of using AI in a proper way. What are your thoughts on that, Tobias?
Could probably have a podcast episode just on that. It's a super huge topic, but no, to be honest, I think that...
You have 3 words.
Yeah, I give you 2 words. The first word is compliance, and the second word is humans. Talking about compliance, I think organizations need to have on their radar that there's a growing regulation for AI that they need to comply with, especially in industries like healthcare, but also in HR, for example. The European AI Act has just been submitted and passed. So like there's a lot of stuff that you need to watch out for this. Not directly related to ethics, but like if you want to comply with regulation, it's also ethics. So that's one big aspect to it. The second big aspect, I think, is humans and people and how to treat them, because there's the idea of implementing AI in order to like replace or like diminish human work. And the way that I see it is to make people just more powerful and enhance their capabilities, or make them do the work they just do, just with more fun and more creativity. And I think once you approach it from that angle, it's much easier to figure everything else out, which comes after that. If you have the right mindset from the start, which is, okay, we want to empower humans and not necessarily replace them. And also we want to comply with regulation that is in place for that technology.
Asaf, do you have any thoughts?
Part of our training program for new developer support engineers is information resources and how to do your research and what do you communicate to the customer. So AI is definitely another information resource. And we need to test that. We need to make sure that this will solve the problem that the customer is having. So we treat that just like any other information we can find.
That's a good way to put it. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's right. It's just more information, right? You can look things up anywhere and give somebody incorrect information, hallucinated information because you misunderstood it. It's just another source of data. That's great. So let's bring this back to service, because that's what this podcast is really all about. We've covered a lot of great, interesting topics related to AI. How do you see AI affecting customer service? Asaf, I'm going to start with you.
What we value is communicating with the customer and understand why they called us, why they're working with us, what type of problems they have, and how we can help them. It's not like the customer is always right, because sometimes what they're asking, they shouldn't be doing. So just answering the question and giving them advice how to do it will not make them successful. And we're in the business of being experts, and it's our job internally to create those experts. AI, as it is today, it helps experts, but if you're not an expert, it will not improve customer service by itself. Replacing people with that, especially with the tough problems, will not get you there. But giving the experts those tools is going to make them happier, more efficient, help them learn and get even to superpower place. So this is
so
we want to get people to.
Thanks, Asaf. Yeah, I know we spend a lot of time analyzing log files, looking for anomalies. So you're right. We could use AI to help us get there faster, hopefully have us provide a faster and more correct answer more consistently. But it's another tool. And that's how I view it too. I think it can help us be more responsive ultimately. But I think we need to figure out, as Tobias was saying, go through that same process. What are the business problems we're trying to solve, and align the right AI to help us solve that problem, and then do a 20 by 20 and prototype. Interesting. Thank you, Asaf.
Sure.
Tobias, what do you think?
Yeah, I think AI in customer service, in the end, it's about like delivering a better customer experience. Like that's the bottom of it. And the way I see it is there are two leverage points that you have. The first leverage point is to like let customers kind of like help themselves so they don't even get in touch with the company. And it could be a chatbot. That's one project that I do for a lot of customers, which is not necessarily like automating customer support, but more as a like improved FAQ, so to say. So helping customers point to the right contact person or to the right document, especially in these like complex B2B processes that I work a lot in. And the second leverage point that you have is to improve the actual conversation that customers have with customer support representatives, if it happens to be that case. For example, if you also, especially in B2B or more complex settings, it very often happens that the person on the phone or in the email like does not know or does not have all the information, just because the information is really complex or the situation of the customer is really difficult. And that typically ends up in two scenarios. Either the answer is not complete or the answer just comes way too late because they take all that time to scan that information. And I was recently working with a call center company that is also doing B2B call support. And we help them implement an AI system that just helps the agents while they are on the call to retrieve information much faster and also pointing them to the right source instead of needing to look through all the documents before or like memorizing all of them, which is really a big pain point because like there's a huge long tail of problems, especially in call center operations. Like you have very often a high turnover of employees. You need to onboard new employees. It's not like you have people working there for 30 years and they know everything. It's like someone is new on that process and they need to be trained really fast in order to like serve a good customer experience. And I think these are the areas where AI can really help and make the whole onboarding process or the whole customer interaction process, much better for the customer in the end, and also for the sales, for the customer support representative.
Yeah, whether it's a call center, level 1 type of support or engineering support that Asaf's in, it's all about getting the customer what they need as fast as possible and correctly.
Absolutely.
Doing that with heart and kindness. That's the icing on the cake.
Absolutely, yeah.
Customers want the cake.
Yeah.
So this has been fascinating. As I mentioned, we have two really inspirational people here. I've learned a lot from both of you, and I really appreciate you being here. Tobias, thank you. Asaf, you're amazing. I really appreciate you being here. I hope our listeners got as much out of this as I did. Please give us feedback, whether it's something we can improve, something you like, let us know. We want to make these podcasts better for you as we go.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or want to hear from a specific guest, email us anytime at InspiredService@InterSystems.com. And when you're ready to unlock the potential of your data and experience the transformative power of support done differently, go to InterSystems.com.